Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be kind of giving my general overview and thoughts on the complete first season of the Book of Boba Fett on Disney+. I didn't do episode by episode reactions to this show simply because I don't have the tools necessary to screen grab the show as I'm watching it. I know there's a whole trick you can do with a capture card or something like that. I'm a broke ass bitch and don't have one of those. So feel free to send me money. You can do that actually by going over to buymeacoffee.com/Mr. Mike Shea and buy me a coffee and help me get some upgrades. I'd like to get a better camera. I'd like to get a capture card so I can actually, you know, like react to stuff as I'm watching it, because man, if you could have seen my reaction to the finale, or honestly the final 3 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, you would have really gotten some interesting reactions out of me. But I want to talk about the season as a whole. It's definitely a little divisive for me. But before we do that, remember guys, if you'd like to follow and hang out with me online, do so by going to my Twitter and Instagram at Mr. Mike Shea, and of course subscribe to this channel. I am changing jobs over the next couple of weeks, so I'm actually going to have my evenings free and a lot more free time. So not only am I going to be doing stand-up a lot more, but I'll have more free time to do stuff like this, to react and review things like I intended to do towards the end of last year. So make sure you guys subscribe and hit the notification bell, because a lot more stuff is coming for you here soon. And as always, make sure you check out my podcast, The Basement Lounge. Go to our website, tblpod.net. Subscribe on all your favorite podcast apps. That being said, let's talk about the Book of Boba Fett Season 1. Book of Boba Fett was a show that I don't think a lot of people thought we were going to get when he showed up in Mandalorian Season 2. I think people thought he would just be kind of like a part of the Mandalorian, and it was kind of a nice surprise when at the end of that season that we see the post-credit scene where Boba takes out Bib Fortuna and sits on Jabba's throne, and therein I think kind of lies the beginning of the divide in the Star Wars fandom, which granted the Star Wars fandom is divided as all hell anyway, but that image of seeing Boba Fett sitting on Jabba the Hutt's throne as the new, as we now know it, as the new daimyo of, you know, Jabba's territory, and finding out there's going to be an entire series of him, we kind of just get this instant reaction of, oh shit, we're getting Boba Fett, the crime lord, not the bounty hunter, not the assassin, the crime lord. And even going into the trailers for the Book of Boba Fett, all we ever saw were these shots of him, you know, sitting at the head of the table, almost like the Godfather. And we were like, we're getting Crime Lord Boba Fett. We really didn't get Crime Lord Boba Fett. We got the lead up to Crime Lord Boba Fett, and it was an interesting lead up. It definitely was not the show that I feel like most people felt like they were going to get. It didn't feel like the show that we were advertised. We were advertised Crime Lord Boba Fett sitting at the head of the table, running things differently, trying to run things more efficiently than Jabba. He wants to run things in such a way that people aren't always trying to kill him all the time. And we definitely got a little bit of that, but I think somebody did the math online. If you take all the time dedicated prior to the finale, of course, all the time dedicated to the quote unquote present day with Boba Fett being the daimyo, I think it only adds up to like 45 minutes across, at that point, 6 episodes that were about 45 minutes each. And that's not a lot of time. We spend a lot of time in the first 4 episodes of this show, mostly in flashbacks. Now, I want to be clear. I love the flashbacks. I almost wish the flashbacks had been the entire show. Like, I almost wish the flashbacks had just been the entire show, ending with him getting together with Fennec Shand and going to get his armor and stuff from the Mandalorian. You know what I mean? Like, I almost wish it had been like a backdoor prequel to the Mandalorian, and we've actually explored, because I think someone online said that, like, all the flashbacks, when you look at how it really kind of adds up to about 5 years worth of time, because the show takes place Mandalorian takes place 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So I think it would have been interesting to see the whole show be the lead up to him, you know, meeting up with the Mandalorian and, you know, sitting on the throne in Jabba's palace. Because what it really kind of ended up turning into was kind of, remember those first few seasons of Arrow on CW, where it was like every couple of minutes it was a flashback to him on the island and kind of learning the things he did when he came back to civilization. We kind of got that spread out over like 4 or 5 seasons. If I knew we were getting 4 or 5 seasons of this show and it was going to just be sprinkled in a little bit of those 5 years, I think I would have been cool with it. But they tried to cram 5 years worth of flashback information into 4 episodes. And I kind of wish it had just gone one way or the other. Either give me the flashback and have that be the focus of the show, or don't give it to me at all. I kind of like the idea of living in the mystery of, how did Boba Fett survive? How did he get out of this? Like, I kind of like enjoying that mystery, or maybe just save that for season 2. You know, now that we've got Boba in his prime and he's settled, and now he can kind of reflect back on how he got there. I kind of would have liked to have seen that separate from the actual show, because what it ends up doing is it kind of takes away from the weight of what's really going on, especially when you get into the finale. We've spent so much more time in the past with these Tusken Raiders that I almost care a lot less about what's going on with Boba Fett. One of the things that I think has been definitely happening more in Star Wars, especially with The Mandalorian and now with Book of Boba Fett, is expanding on what we have. Taking what we have, creatures we have, planets we have, and learning more about them. We learned so much about Tatooine and the Tuskens in Book of Boba Fett. We learned a little bit about them in The Mandalorian, particularly in the episode where we meet Cobb Vanth for the first time. But those flashbacks we spend time in with Boba Fett living amongst the Tuskens was like the stuff of dreams. It was so fascinating, and getting to learn so much about how Tusken culture works and where they came from. And kind of the take on like, you know, on native rights and you know, the idea that native lives matter has been kind of a thing that came out of that. It's been very, like, almost looking in a mirror darkly at like what happened with the Native Americans when the settlers came over here to the States. And it was such an interesting take on that. It almost felt very like classic Star Trek. And I know there's a lot of like geeks right now who are like, how dare you compare Star Wars? Like, I love both. I love Trek and I love Star Wars. And there was something almost inherently classic Star Trek about the flashbacks in the Book of Boba Fett, because Star Trek would constantly use alien races and the way they are portrayed as a way to reflect on our own history and our own world that we're living in. And I got a lot of that in the flashbacks with Boba Fett. And I kind of want more of that. I was almost bummed out when the flashbacks would end and we'd be back in the present day, because the stuff that took place, again, in the present day, the stuff in the present day felt like it was just almost like secondary. And almost like it just like felt like they didn't know what they really wanted to do with it. And they felt like they weren't confident in how to take the concept of Boba Fett becoming a crime lord. It's like they weren't confident in how to make a 6-7 episode season out of that. It's like they had an idea, they couldn't find a way to make it a flushed out 7 episode story arc. So they really just kind of reduced it to 1, 2, really, when you take the finale into account, and just kind of sprinkled it throughout. And especially when you get into, which I guess this is as good a time as any to get into, kind of where people are really divided which is in episodes 5 and 6, which those 2 episodes are, you know, kind of jokingly and lovingly being called, you know, Mandalorian 2.5. Episodes 5 and 6 deal almost exclusively with Din Djarin and Grogu and, spoiler alert, this way we haven't seen it, Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano. It's also where we get introduced to the return of Cad Bane. And I say that these episodes are divisive because on one hand, people have kind of unilaterally agreed they're some of the best Star Wars that we've had in a while. And I say that as somebody who actually enjoys the sequel trilogy with Rey and Finn and Poe. I enjoy those movies quite a lot, actually. And I know I'm in the minority, especially when it comes to The Last Jedi, but I really enjoy those movies. I still feel like, though, when it comes to expanding the world we live in and kind of tying everything together as well, the episodes 5 and 6 of Book of Boba Fett, or Mandalorian 2.5, were the best. In 2 episodes of television, Jon Favreau and Bryce Dallas Howard and Dave Filoni were able to tie together and interconnect the original trilogy, the prequels, the sequels, Rebels, Clone Wars, The Mandalorian, and the video game Jedi Fallen Order. Like, all of these things were interwoven together in some way, shape, or form in 2 episodes of television. We haven't seen that in any Star Wars. We saw little references. We saw like 2 references, very small references, to the prequel trilogy in the sequels. And in The Mandalorian, we'd hear a couple things here and there, but The Mandalorian takes place pre-sequel trilogy, so we're not quite there. So it was an interesting thing to see that there was so much Star Wars world building in just these 2 episodes. And then we get into the finale. The finale was fantastic. The finale was absolutely fantastic. And it kind of blew my mind a little bit when I saw the episode was directed by Robert Rodriguez. Robert Rodriguez did the 1st and 3rd episodes of the show. And I kind of felt like episode 3 was definitely the weakest of the entire season. Episode 3 is where they introduce the modded biker gang, which are basically just the Star Wars Power Rangers, the way they've got them set up. Episode 3 is the one where kind of just nothing really happens. We meet a Wookiee, we meet a biker gang. We get a Rancor that is not mentioned again until the finale, who we still don't have a name for. I'm calling it Fluffy because whatever, it's cute. So to see where episode 3 of Book of Boba Fett was, I thought, really crappy. Episode 1 was fine. It was fine, but the finale was spectacular. It almost kind of had me scratching my head like, okay, Bob, like, where was this before? I'm not entirely sure what the story is with the behind the scenes on this show. Like I said, it just kind of feels like they had this idea. They couldn't make it work for 7 episodes, so they shot what they could and filled in the rest with other stuff. And what's kind of a bummer is that the other stuff was more interesting. All the stuff with Mando and the flashbacks to Boba Fett living with the Tuskens was ultimately far more interesting than the present day attempted crime lord Boba Fett stuff. In the finale itself, I thought there was a great real like classic Star Wars action. Some of the action sequences felt so kind of desperate and hopeless that it honestly reminded me a little bit of Rogue One. And that was, I thought, really fun and really neat. Also, there's this, I gotta tell you, like, hang on one sec. All right. You see this little guy right here? You see little Grogu? You see this little hand knitted little dude right here? If you had told me 10 years ago that I would give my life for this little guy, for a baby in Yoda's species, that I would sacrifice everything for him, I'd have told you were crazy. I would die for this little guy. Okay. I damn near broke down into tears when he showed up in the finale. Of course, I obviously got emotional when he shows up in episode 6, and we're spending all of this time with him training with Luke. That was, my jaw dropped when I was like, oh my God, we're going to spend this episode hanging out with Luke and Grogu. You gotta be shitting me. And I loved it so much. I had this little guy there with me, and I was holding him, and I was just loving the episode. When he shows up in this episode, I was like, oh, kind of figured he was going to choose the shirt. It was kind of planted. But the moment during the fight when Din is, helping the mechanic get out of there, and she pulls the blanket back, and there's Grogu, and Din looks down and does double takes, like, wait, what? What are you doing here? You could hear this true love and joy, almost painful joy, that he had his boy back. He couldn't believe I'm feeling it right now. He had this tension in his voice. Like, my baby boy is back. He's back. And little dude jumps up and he grabs him, and he just grabs it. He's like, fuck shooting this droid. Like, I gotta hug my boy. He's like, I love you. I'm so glad you're here. Oh, you got the shirt. Okay, listen, I gotta go kill a droid. I'm gonna put you down. I gotta kill a droid. You just I'm so happy you're here. I gotta kill a droid. Just bear with me. I was tearing up, man. And then as soon as, like, not a minute later, when, the droid shoots in front of them and it blows up there's the little cart they're riding on, and Mando wastes no time, jetpack, because Grogu's flying through the air, and he's like, nope, grabs his boy, spins around, lands on, like getting to see Mando continue to just wreck shop, holding off this giant killer droid while still protecting his little buddy, was just so good. I got to see two things in the finale of Book of Boba Fett that I never thought I never even considered. And one of those is I got to watch Boba Fett riding a Rancor, and there is something inherently fantastic about that. Just because when Boba Fett says I got to get reinforcements, again, the Rancor had been such a throwaway thing in episode 3, I forgot about it. He says, I'm going to go get reinforcements. And I'm like, who are you going to go get? I had no idea who he was going to get. None. I was like, where is he? Is he going to go get Jawas? Is he going to go try and recruit more Tuskens? Like, where is he going? And then you hear the, and I was like, what the, oh my God, he has a Rancor. I had forgotten completely. And he shows up riding this thing. I was clapping in my living room. I was like, I'm watching Boba Fett ride a Rancor destroying shit. This is fantastic. I'm not saying I was aroused, but I was aroused. It was that. So that was one of the things I never even considered getting to see in my life, was Boba Fett riding a Rancor. The second thing I got to see that I never thought I'd ever get, never even thought about, was Grogu walking up to a Rancor and going, boop, and then napping with said Rancor. I got to watch Grogu boop and snuggle with a Rancor. There is something objectively fantastic about that. Book of Boba Fett has a lot of really high positive Star Wars moments. Particularly the final 3 episodes are utterly wonderful. The show as a whole, though, I can't necessarily say that I loved. There was a lot of things about it to love, but there was a lot of things about it that just felt like a misfire. A lot of moments with the writing, it seemed a little too casual. It's not that the show itself wasn't good. It's not what we were promised. So there's a matter of just kind of disappointment and not living up to expectations. Now, granted, a lot of that isn't necessarily the fault of the people making the show. A lot of that is blamed on whoever the marketing team is. We were sold on one show and presented with another. You know, we were sold on a filet mignon and we were sold a ribeye. Now, that ribeye was delicious, but it wasn't the filet mignon that we were promised. That's a weird metaphor. I think I'm going to go back and rewatch it at some point, probably prior to Mandalorian season 3. And I kind of, because I want to watch seasons 1 and 2 of Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett kind of like all at once before I watch Mando season 3, because I don't think we're even getting that till next year. But ultimately, it just, Book of Boba Fett, it hit more than it missed, but it missed a lot. I mean, it didn't miss on like a stormtrooper level, but it missed quite a bit. I felt like Fennec, you know, Ming-Na Wen's character a lot of times was just kind of relegated to being a narrator slash just kind of voice on Boba Fett's shoulder. She didn't really have a whole heck of a lot to do. She mostly, like, literally in the final episode, she's standing there with Mando and Boba Fett, and they've been together the whole time, and yet she's explaining the situation to them when they shouldn't need the situation explained to them, because they've been there the whole time she has. They're fully aware of what the situation is. They're living it right now. And you know that her explanation is simply for our benefit. It just kind of, it's like you've got Ming-Na Wen and as playing this master assassin. It felt like kind of a disservice. She still gets a lot of moments to shine and show what a badass she was. She kind of gets the final middle finger to the bad guys in the episode, which, as cool as that scene was, I still kind of felt like ultimately it should have gone to Boba Fett. When you find out that the Pike Syndicate was behind the slaughtering of the Tuskens and not the biker gang that he thought it was, it kind of seems like it should have been Boba Fett's, you know, final mission is to kill these fuckers. But having it be Fennec makes sense because she was out kind of trying to help him clean it. She's his enforcer. So it does kind of make sense, but it would have been a little more poetic for him to get the shot in. But I also did get to I liked getting to see him finish off Cad Bane. I know people are going to be pissed that Cad Bane is dead. Here's the thing. We didn't know we were getting Cad Bane in this show. As far as we knew, he was already dead. We're lucky we got him as much as we did. And I got to say, Cad Bane is in this show for basically an episode and a half. You know, the final chunk of episode 6 and most of episode 7. But I'll tell you what, when he was on screen, I was captivated. The way they did his Cad Bane's face with the mix of animatronics and makeup and CGI or whatever, however they did it, I don't know. It looked so real. And it just really reminded me of how much I love Cad Bane. I love his design. I love his voice. I love his style. There's something about the character of Cad Bane that is just, it's just so intoxicating and infectious. And you love Cad Bane every time he's on screen. And it was having Boba Fett be the one to kill Cad Bane makes all the sense in the world. They have history. They have history with each other. If you've seen Rebels and Clone Wars, you know these guys have history. So getting to see Cad Bane and Boba Fett finally square off to the death was such a great thing to see, especially because Boba took him out like a Tusken. He didn't take him out like a bounty hunter. He took him out like a Tusken, and that kind of has this great finality to it on the story of Boba Fett's kind of life 2.0, because he kind of he had to relearn who he was, and he did it through the Tuskens. And so finishing them off like a Tusken as kind of a final, you know, flag in the ground in the name of the Tuskens was so great. So that was everything to do with Cad Bane in the show was fantastic. Ultimately, though, going back to what I was saying, I feel like the show is good, not great. I think it's worth the watch because, again, it does hit a lot more than it misses, but when it misses pretty hard. The stuff that's good in the show is really good, but the stuff that's bad is really freaking bad. So if I had to give it on a scale of 1 to 10, I probably give it a 6. Maybe I could be convinced to a 7, but if I have to give it a score from 1 to 10, we'll meet in the middle and call it a 6.5. It's fine for what it is. I really kind of hope things would have gone differently. What I liked, I didn't get enough of, and what I didn't like, I got too much of. But I liked more than I didn't like. So if you're a hardcore Star Wars fan and you haven't watched this yet, definitely watch it because there's going to be a lot of little nuggets and Easter eggs, again, tying everything together in a way that Star Wars hasn't done before. And I think that alone makes it worth the watching. And again, the final 3 episodes are some of the best Star Wars that has ever Star Warsed, period. So ultimately giving it a 6.5 out of 10 here on the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure you subscribe, leave a like on the video, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and support me on Buy My Coffee. And in the meantime, we'll see you guys next time with another reaction and review. Bye.